I know it's been a perplexing disease, and you said that it's one that everybody knows about. People know when you say malaria, people realize that term. It's not like something people haven't heard about, but no one really started looking deeply into it until you did.
Well, no, people have been studying malaria for years, and it's very well characterized. But the focus on these young kids with severe disease really took off about 25 years ago. And we started looking at it in Malawi, and a number of other research groups around the continent have been looking at it. But in terms of American academics, this program in Malawi is distinguished by the fact that Michigan State has let me be there for 6 months a year. And in the U.S. academic model, that's very unusual. And I think it's made a huge difference to the quality of the work and to the level of our acceptance in Malawi.
This is a long-term thing. Did anybody ever expect to sort of go in, work at this for a little while, and then, oh, well, they figured it out and they're gone again?
I don't know. But I certainly didn't think I would be at it 25 years later in the same place. It's been a very rewarding scientific study because each question opens up 3 or 4 more questions, and we've been able to follow the trail along all these years.
Are you finding along the way, obviously you're making discoveries, are you finding things that start to resemble a cure, a treatment? Do you feel like you're making headway, or is it all just more questions?
We're making some headway. One of the most interesting findings is that not everything that has been called malaria is malaria. The symptoms are not unique to the disease. So there's nothing about malaria that is just malaria, with the exception of one physical finding that we stumbled upon in Malawi. Everything else could be any one of several different diseases. So the reductionist view has been, if you have these symptoms and you have malaria parasites in your blood, you have malaria. You have a malaria disease. And that's not the case. The malaria parasites can be in the blood and not cause any problem at all. They can be in the blood and be completely incidental to the symptoms. So actually pinning the parasites to the symptoms has been tricky. We were lucky enough several years ago to stumble onto findings in the back of the eye, which allow us to make our diagnosis of cerebral malaria much more secure than it used to be in the past. So I would say that that's been a significant breakthrough, but it doesn't help us figure out exactly what's causing the disease. It just allows us to focus more on the people who actually have the disease.
You also, I mean, how many years ago now you got the MRI, which has been an advance in what? In studying what part of this?
The MRI has been, we've had it now for 2 seasons, 2 malaria transmission seasons in Malawi, and it has allowed us to do a couple of things. We're able to look at these kids who truly have malaria and compare them to the ones who just look like they have malaria. And we've been able to examine kids at different time points throughout their illness. Before, the only real look at the brain that we had was at autopsy, and that was in the kids who failed to survive. So we didn't have any real idea of what was going on in the brains of the kids who were surviving.
So no real way to tell what. You could tell some lived and some died. You could only look at the autopsies, obviously, the ones who passed away. What are you learning about the kids who lived?
Well, it's a little early to say, and we're still in the process of sorting out the information. But there do seem to be characteristic features in the brains of kids with cerebral malaria that may explain some of the neurological syndromes we see in the survivors. We've been able to identify, for instance, that about 10% of kids have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And there is a certain part of the brain that seems to be involved in that. So we may be able to predict that, and we may be able to address that earlier on in the disease. In terms of what may be treatable in the kids, it seems that swelling in the brain is key, but how to go about treating it is still a matter of intense discussion within the group. But we hadn't appreciated that. Even on the autopsies, we hadn't appreciated the degree of swelling because the process of the autopsy obfuscated that. So the MRI, if I had to pick one finding that was surprising that it allowed us to see thus far, I would say it's the swelling.
And we'll be right back.